She was a waitress struggling to survive, and he was the frail, penniless old man she protected every morning. Her manager despised him. The other customers ignored him. But Mireia Jensen, running on cheap coffee and 3 hours of sleep, always saved him a warm pastry and paid for his coffee from her own empty pockets. It was a simple, quiet act of kindness. But that routine shattered when 4 bodyguards in black suits and 2 high-powered corporate lawyers walked into the greasy diner, ignoring everyone, except her. Her simple kindness was about to collide with a secret so massive it would cost one man everything and give her the power to change the world. The alarm on Mireia Jensen's cracked smartphone screen was a digital scream in the pre-dawn darkness. 4:15 a.m. She slapped at it, the plastic case rattling on the chipped paint of her nightstand. For a full 10 seconds, she just lay there in her cramped studio apartment, the stale scent of the city and the faint smell of grease from her work uniform hanging in the air. Outside, the rain had started, a cold November drizzle that promised to soak through her thin coat. Mireia was 24, but most mornings she felt closer to 80. She was 2 years deep at the Oakwood Diner, a job she'd taken to cover her night classes for a nursing degree. Now, she was just working to cover the interest on the loans for the classes she'd had to drop. She went through the motions, a lukewarm shower that ran cold after 2 minutes. She winced as she pulled on her work shoes. The left one had a small hole developing in the sole, a fact her foot remembered every time she stepped in a puddle. She skipped breakfast, as always, grabbing a day-old bagel she'd taken from the diner's discard pile the night before. Her 1998 sedan, a rusting hunk of metal she'd named the Optimist, sputtered twice before the engine finally caught, coughing to life with a groan that mirrored her own. The drive to the diner was a blur of traffic lights and the first grey light of morning filtering through the smog. The Oakwood Diner was already buzzing with the low hum of the fluorescent lights and the sizzle of the grill. The smell of frying bacon and stale coffee hit her the moment she pushed through the swinging kitchen doors. "You're 3 minutes late, Jensen," a voice barked. Mr. Gorman, the diner's manager, was standing by the coffee machine, a clipboard clutched in his beefy hand. He was a man whose small-town power had gone entirely to his head. His uniform shirt was always one size too small, straining over a belly cultivated by years of sampling the diner's fries. "Sorry, Mr. Gorman. Traffic on the bridge," Mireia murmured, tying her apron. "Save it. Section 3 is yours, and wipe down the counters. Whoever closed last night did a half job." Mireia just nodded, grabbing a damp cloth. "Yes, Mr. Gorman." She spent the first hour in a flurry of activity, brewing coffee, taking orders from the bleary-eyed construction workers, refilling salt shakers. It was a thankless, mechanical existence. And then, at 6:05 a.m., exactly on time, the front door's tiny bell jingled. He was old, not just elderly, but ancient, forged from time and hardship. He wore a threadbare wool coat that was missing 2 buttons, even in the warmth of the diner. His face was a road map of wrinkles, his beard wispy and white, and he walked with a slight tremor, one hand clutching a worn wooden cane. The regulars ignored him. The new customers shifted uncomfortably. Mr. Gorman watched him with open hostility. The old man, whom Mireia had only ever heard referred to as Aris by a social worker once months ago, shuffled to his usual spot, the smallest, most out-of-the-way booth in her section, the one with the cracked vinyl seat. Mireia finished delivering a plate of pancakes and immediately went to him. "Good morning, Mr. Aris," she said softly, already grabbing a coffee pot. He looked up, his eyes a pale, watery blue. It took him a moment to focus. "Ah, morning, dear." His voice was a dry rasp, like old leaves. "The usual?" she asked. He fumbled in his coat pocket, pulling out a small, worn coin purse. He emptied it onto the table. A few dimes, a nickel, and 3 pennies. He looked at the paltry sum, his brow furrowing in confusion. I seem to be a bit short today, he whispered, his voice full of shame. Don't you worry about that, Mireia said, her voice bright and quick. She poured him a cup of coffee. Looks like we're running a special this morning. Free coffee for all our favorite customers. He looked at her, his gaze sharp for a fleeting second. You're a kind girl. We all need a little kindness, she said, winking. She walked back to the counter, but Gorman was there to intercept her. What do you think you're doing, Jensen? He hissed, his face unpleasantly close. He's a paying customer, Mr. Gorman. He's a vagrant. He smells. He's driving away business. He just wants a coffee, Mireia insisted, her spine stiffening. He wants a handout, and you're giving it to him. That coffee comes out of your tips, you understand me? Or better yet, your paycheck. I'm not running a charity. Fine, Mireia said, her jaw tight. It's out of my tips. Gorman sneered. Your funeral. Mireia returned to Mr. Aris. She discreetly pulled a blueberry muffin, one she was supposed to throw out because it was a day old, from her apron pocket and slid it onto a napkin. And it looks like the kitchen made an extra. Can't let it go to waste. Mr. Aris looked at the muffin, then back at her. He didn't smile, not exactly, but the deep lines of worry in his face seemed to soften. He broke off a tiny piece and began to eat with slow, deliberate care. Mireia watched him for a second. He was always alone, always quiet. He never bothered anyone. He just sat, nursing his single cup of coffee for an hour, sometimes staring out the window, sometimes seeming to stare through the window into a past only he could see. The rest of her shift was a blur of demanding customers, spilled sodas, and Gorman's constant grating voice. She ran. She carried heavy trays until her shoulders burned. She smiled at patrons who tipped 10% on a massive bill and smiled even wider at the ones who left her nothing but a messy table. At 2:00 p.m., she clocked out, her feet throbbing, her apron stained with ketchup and coffee. She counted her tips, $43.50. After subtracting the $2.50 for Mr. Aris's coffee, she was left with 41 $. That wouldn't even cover the late fee on her electric bill. As she pushed open the diner door, the cold rain hit her face. She pulled her thin coat tight and ran to her car, the hole in her shoe making her sock instantly cold and damp. She sat in the driver's seat, resting her forehead on the steering wheel, and for a moment she just breathed. She thought of Mr. Aris. She wondered where he went when he left the diner. Did he have a warm place to sleep? Did he have anyone? Her problems, the rent, the car, the debt, felt overwhelming. But at least she had a car, at least she had a roof, however leaky. She turned the key. The optimist groaned, sputtered, and finally, mercifully, started. As she drove away, she didn't notice a sleek, black car, a car profoundly out of place in this neighborhood, parked across the street, its tinted windows revealing nothing, its engine silently idling in the rain. The next few weeks fell into a pattern of escalating misery. The November cold deepened, settling into the city's bones, and it seemed to chill everything. Mr. Gorman's mood, always sour, turned venomous. The diner's owner was apparently pressuring him about profit margins, which, in Gorman's mind, translated to harassing his staff and his most vulnerable customers. His target, more often than not, was Mr. Aris. Every morning at 6:05 a.m., the bell would jingle, and Mr. Aris would shuffle in, his coat seeming thinner, his tremor more pronounced. And every morning, Mireia would be there. "Good morning, Mr. Aris. Coffee?" "Thank you, dear." She'd bring him the coffee, and a forgotten muffin or a mismade piece of toast. She'd ring it up, and at the end of her shift, she'd pay the $2.50 tab from her own dwindling tips. It was a silent conspiracy between them, a small pocket of grace in a world that didn't offer much. Gorman saw it all, and it enraged him. One Tuesday, it came to a head. The diner was slow. Only a few tables were occupied. Mr. Orris was in his booth, quietly sipping his coffee and staring at his hands. Gorman strode out of his office. "All right, that's enough," he announced to the diner at large. He marched over to Mr. Orris's table. Mireya, who was refilling ketchup bottles, froze. "Party's over, old man," Gorman said, his voice loud enough for everyone to hear. Mr. Orris looked up, startled. I beg your pardon? You've been nursing that same cup for 45 minutes. This is a restaurant, not a homeless shelter. Pay your bill and get out." Mireya rushed over. "Mr. Gorman, he's fine. He's not bothering anyone." "He's bothering me, Jensen. Look at him. He's filthy. He's bad for business." "I'll pay his bill," Mireya said, her voice shaking but firm. She reached for her apron pocket. "That's not the point," Gorman snapped. "The point is, I don't want his kind in here." "Now beat it," he said, slapping the table with his hand. The force of it knocked over Mr. Arris's coffee cup, spilling the dregs of lukewarm coffee across the table and onto the old man's lap. Mr. Arris let out a small, startled cry, more of surprise than pain. He struggled to stand up, brushing at the stain on his thin trousers. "Now look what you did!" Gorman yelled, as if Mr. Arris had spilled it himself. "You're making a mess! Get out! Get out now!" Something inside Mireya snapped. The exhaustion, the $41 tip days, the throbbing feet, the late fees, it all coalesced into a single, sharp point of righteous fury. "Stop it," she said. Gorman turned. "What did you say to me?" "I said stop it," Mireya repeated, her voice clearer now, cutting through the diner's quiet hum. "He is a guest. He didn't do anything to you. You spilled his coffee. You're the one making a scene. Leave him alone." The entire diner was silent. The cook, a burly man named Sal, poked his head out of the kitchen window. The two cops in booth 4 stopped eating. Gorman's face turned a shade of mottled purple. He jabbed a thick finger at her. "You're defending him. This bum? Over your boss?" "I'm defending a person you're bullying," Mireya shot back. "You should be ashamed." Gorman was speechless for a second. He looked around, saw the cops watching him with mild interest, and visibly reined himself in. He smoothed his shirt, his face settling into a mask of cold fury. "Jensen," he said, his voice dangerously low. "My office. Now." He turned and stalked away. Mireya looked at Mr. Orris, who seemed smaller than ever. "Are you all right?" she whispered, grabbing a cloth to wipe the table. He just looked at her, his pale blue eyes unreadable. "You shouldn't have done that, dear. You'll get in trouble." "He can't talk to people like that," she said, her hands shaking. "I'll be right back." She walked to Gorman's office, her heart hammering against her ribs. The door was open. He was standing behind his metal desk, which was piled high with invoices. "Close the door." She did. "Do you have any idea what you just did?" he seethed. "You undermined me. You embarrassed me in front of my staff and my customers. You were harassing an old man," she said. "I was protecting my business. This isn't a soup kitchen. Your job is to take orders and bring food. That's it. It is not your job to defend the freeloaders you decide to adopt. He pays for his coffee. I pay for it. Which is another thing. You are stealing, giving away company property, muffins, toast, coffee. That's theft, Jensen. I could have you arrested." You told me to pay for it from my tips. And the muffins? The toast? Did I tell you to give those away? No. I've been watching you. I've been documenting it. I have grounds to fire you right here, right now, for cause. No unemployment. Mireya's blood ran cold. He was right. She had been giving him the day-olds. It was, technically, theft. She started. But the words died. Gorman smiled, a triumphant, ugly twist of his lips. But I'm a nice guy. I'm going to give you one last chance, because you're a hard worker when you're not playing Mother Teresa. He leaned across the desk. From now on, the old man is not allowed in. If he comes in, you tell him we reserve the right to refuse service. If he doesn't leave, you call the police. If you serve him, if you so much as give him a glass of water, you are fired. Do you understand me? Mireya stood there, trapped. Her job, her rent, her mountain of debt. It all flashed before her eyes. She thought of the eviction notice taped to her apartment building's main door. Do you understand me, Jensen? She nodded, the movement stiff, painful. Yes, Mr. Gorman. Good. Now get out of here and clear that table. Mireya walked out of the office, her entire body feeling numb. Mr. Aris was gone. He had shuffled out while she was being reprimanded. The table was empty, save for the damp cloth and the overturned cup. She spent the rest of the day on autopilot, her smile plastered on, her voice a hollow, "Can I get you anything else?" Every time the bell jingled, her stomach clenched, praying it wasn't him. That night, she got a call from her landlord, a curt man named Mr. Henderson. "Mireya, Henderson, listen, your rent was due on the 1st. It's the 10th. I've been patient." "I know, Mr. Henderson, I get paid on Friday. I had a car repair. I'll have it, I promise." "I hear that every month, kid. I'll have it. This isn't a charity. Friday, the whole amount, plus the $100 late fee. Or I start eviction proceedings on Monday. I've got a new tenant lined up who can actually pay." The line clicked dead. Mireya slid down the wall of her apartment, her phone in her hand. She was trapped. She needed this job. She couldn't lose it. She would have to cut Mr. Aris off. The thought made her physically ill. She had to choose between her survival and his small, daily comfort. "I'm sorry," she whispered to the empty, cold room. "I'm so sorry." The next morning, Mireya's stomach was in knots. She arrived at the diner 15 minutes early, her face pale, her eyes gritty from a sleepless night. She'd rehearsed the words over and over. "I'm sorry, Mr. Aris, I can't serve you. My manager. You have to leave." Each repetition tasted like ash in her mouth. She prepped her section, her hands trembling so badly she spilled a tray of sugar packets. Sal, the cook, gave her a sympathetic look. He'd heard the shouting match yesterday. "Gorman's a piece of work," he grunted, flipping a row of eggs. "Don't let him get to you." "Easy for you to say," she muttered. "He's not threatening to fire you." "He threatens to fire me every Tuesday," Sal shrugged. "Stick up for yourself, kid." "I tried. It just made things worse." 6 Belhor. AM came and went. Then 6 Ohor to 1 AM, 6:02 AM. Mireya found herself watching the door, her heart a trip hammer in her chest. 6:05 AM. The bell on the door remained silent. 6:10 AM. The booth, his booth, was empty. Mireya felt a strange, conflicting mix of relief and profound anxiety. Relief that she wouldn't have to turn him away. Anxiety that Gorman's cruelty had already done the job. 6:30 AM. Still no sign of him. "See?" Gorman sneered as he passed her, clipboard in hand. "Problem solved. Amazing what happens when you finally enforce the rules." Mireya ignored him, her eyes drifting back to the empty booth. It just looked wrong. The next day, it was the same story. 4:15. AM alarm. Cold shower. sputtering car, and at 6:05 a.m., no Mr. Harris. The empty booth became a glaring hole in the diner's fabric. Mireia felt his absence like a physical ache. What if Gorman had scared him off for good? What if he had nowhere else to go for a warm coffee? What if he was sick? By the third day, Mireia was frantic. She couldn't focus on her orders. She brought pancakes to a table that ordered eggs. She forgot the bacon. "Jensen, get your head in the game," Gorman yelled from across the diner. She couldn't. All she could see was that empty booth. He was gone. He had disappeared. During her lunch break, she did something she'd never done. She clocked out, and, instead of eating, she walked the 3 blocks to the St. Jude's Mission, the biggest soup kitchen in the area. She pushed open the heavy wooden doors, the smell of boiled vegetables and industrial disinfectant hitting her. A tired-looking woman at the front desk looked up. "Can I help you?" I'm looking for someone," Mireia said, feeling foolish. "An elderly man. His name is Aris. He's frail, white-beard, wears an old wool coat." The woman sighed, gesturing to the crowded cafeteria. "Honey, you just described half the men in here. We don't keep tabs. If he's here, he's here. If not, he's not." "But I haven't seen him in 3 days," Mireia persisted, her voice cracking. "He used to come to the diner where I work, every morning. Now he's gone. I'm worried." The woman's expression softened. "He a regular of yours? Look, they drift. They get sick. The cold snap is hard on them. Maybe he found a warmer spot. Maybe something else." "Something else?" "It's a hard life out there, sweetie. You should just hope he's okay and move on." Mireia left the mission feeling colder than when she'd arrived. Something else. The euphemism hung in the air. She went back to the diner, the last few hours of her shift an absolute torture. What if he was hurt? What if he was lying in an alley somewhere? All because Gorman had. No. All because she hadn't stood up to Gorman. All because she'd been a coward. That night she couldn't sleep. She tried calling the non-emergency police line. "Hanoi Police, Precinct 5. A bored voice answered. "Hello, I'd like to report a missing person," Mireia said. "Name?" "Aris. I don't know his last name. He's an elderly man, homeless, I think. He hasn't been seen in 3 days." The officer audibly sighed. "Ma'am, a homeless person with no last name who hasn't been to a diner you work at. That's not a missing persons report. That's a Tuesday. We can't file anything without a full name, an address, or a clear sign of foul play." "But he could be in trouble." "Ma'am, there are thousands of Arises in this city. He's probably just found a new diner. Don't waste police resources." The line clicked. Mireia threw her phone onto her bed. Useless. Everything was useless. She was completely, utterly alone. And so was he. The 4th day dawned, dark and heavy with rain. It was a Friday, the day she had to pay Mr. Henderson or face eviction. She had $41 from yesterday, $38 from the day before, and $50 from the day before that. Even with today's tips, she wouldn't have enough to cover the rent and the $100 late fee. She was defeated. She walked into the diner, her shoulders slumped. Gorman was there, a smug look on his face. "Payday, Jensen," he said cheerfully. "Don't spend it all in one place." Mireia didn't even have the energy to glare at him. She just tied on her apron and went to her section. The diner was packed, a Friday morning rush. Good for tips, at least. She was in the weeds for an hour straight, juggling 6 tables, balancing hot plates, running to the kitchen. She was so focused on not dropping anything, on not mixing up the orders, that she didn't see it happen. At 9:15 a.m., the entire diner suddenly went quiet. It wasn't a gradual hushing. It was a sudden, absolute vacuum of sound. The clatter of forks stopped. The conversations died mid-sentence. Even the sizzle from Sal's grill seemed to fade. Mireia was holding a heavy tray, and the sudden silence was so jarring that she almost dropped it. She turned, and her world tilted on its axis. The front of the diner was composed almost entirely of a large plate-glass window, currently streaked with rain. Through it, Mireia saw not one, but two midnight black Maybach sedans. They were parked, illegally, in the bus stop right outside, their engines purring with a quiet, expensive rumble that vibrated the very glass. They were impossibly clean, despite the rain, as if the water was too intimidated to land on them. Then, the doors of the cars opened in perfect, unnerving synchronicity. From each car, two men emerged. They were not just men. They were human walls. All four were identical in their intimidating presence. They wore impeccably tailored black suits, black shirts, and black ties. Each had a small, clear earpiece coiled into one ear. Their faces were carved from granite, devoid of all expression. They scanned the street, the diner, the world, with cold, professional detachment. The first two men from the lead car walked to the diner door. One, a mountain of a man with a shaved head, reached forward and pulled the door open, holding it as if he were a doorman at the most exclusive hotel in the world. The tiny bell above the door gave a pathetic, terrified jingle. The other two men flanked the entrance from the outside. The first man stepped just inside the diner. The second man followed, standing at his shoulder. They didn't move. They didn't speak. They just stood. Their presence sucked all the air out of the room. Mr. Gorman, who had been barking at the kitchen, froze. His face went through a rapid series of emotions: confusion, then annoyance at the illegally parked cars, and finally a dawning, obsequious excitement. These were not cops. This was not the health inspector. This was money. He smoothed his hair, straightened his tie over his stained shirt, and practically skipped toward the door. "Gentlemen, welcome to the Oakwood Diner," Gorman gushed, his voice unctuously high. "A table for 4? Right this way. We have a special on the The first man, the one with the shaved head, didn't even look at Gorman. His gaze swept the diner, cataloguing every face, every exit. His eyes passed over Mireia, lingered for a fraction of a second, and moved on. The second man did the same. They were a well-oiled machine, and Gorman was a piece of gum on their shoe. Gorman's smile faltered. "A table?" The first man finally spoke. His voice was a low, gravelly rumble. "We're secure." "Secure?" Mireia thought, her heart now hammering for a completely different reason. Secure for what? A second later, the answer walked in. From the rear, Maybach, a man and a woman stepped out. They were not bodyguards. They were different. The man was in his late 50s, with silver hair and a sharp, three-piece navy suit that probably cost more than Mireia's car. He carried a sleek, expensive-looking leather briefcase. The woman, younger but no less intimidating, wore a dark grey pantsuit, her hair pulled back in a severe, perfect bun. She held an identical briefcase. They looked like they had just stepped out of a Richest People in the World magazine. They walked into the Greasy Spoon diner with the same confidence as if they were walking into a billion-dollar boardroom. The entire diner staff and all the customers were frozen, watching this bizarre, silent movie-level spectacle. The man and woman strode past Gorman, who was still holding his welcome pose, his smile now looking like a pained grimace. The lawyers, for that's what they had to be, Mireia thought, stopped in the middle of the diner. The man, Mr. Barrett, as she would soon learn, scanned the room. His eyes, sharp as a hawk's, landed on Mireia, She was still holding the heavy tray, frozen in place between tables 3 and 4. He didn't smile. He simply nodded at her, a crisp, clinical acknowledgement. Then he addressed the room. His voice was not loud, but it projected, cutting through the silence with the precision of a scalpel. "We are looking for a Ms. Mireya Jensen." Every head in the diner, Gorman, Sal in the kitchen window, the cops in booth 4, the construction workers, the retirees, all of them swiveled and stared directly at Mireya. Mireya's blood turned to ice. The tray in her hands suddenly weighed 1,000 pounds. "They're here for me?" Her mind reeled. This has to be a mistake. Or was it? The student loans. She'd missed a payment. No, she'd missed 3. Were they repossessing her? Suing her? Could they send people like this for student loans? Or was it Mr. Henderson? Did he sick his lawyers on her for the late rent? But bodyguards? Gorman's face lit up with malicious glee. He saw it now. Mireya was in trouble. Serious trouble. He marched over to her. "Jensen!" he snapped, his voice gleeful. "You're holding up the whole diner. What did you do? Finally get caught stealing?" He turned to the lawyers. "She's right here, sirs, ma'am, and she is, as of this moment, fired. Whatever she did, the Oakwood diner is not responsible. She is no longer an employee. You can take her." He gestured to her. "Go on, Jensen. They're here for you. Hand over your apron." Mireya was shaking, her face flushed with a mix of terror and humiliation. She couldn't move. She couldn't speak. Fired? Sued? Arrested? I don't understand," she whispered. The woman lawyer, Ms. Lena, took a step forward. "Ms. Mireya Jensen?" she asked, her voice softer than the man's, but just as firm. Mireya nodded numbly. "We are from the law firm of Sullivan and Frost," the woman continued. "We are here to represent our client." I can't afford a lawyer," Mireya stammered, thinking they were trying to serve her. Mr. Barrett, the male lawyer, actually chuckled. It was a dry, humorless sound. "Oh no, Ms. Jensen, you misunderstand. We are not your lawyers." The front door's bell jingled one more time. The 4 bodyguards, who had been standing like statues, suddenly snapped to attention. They formed a perimeter, 2 at the door, 2 shielding the entrance. A new figure was silhouetted in the doorway, framed by the rain and the grey morning light. He stepped inside. Gorman, seeing another VIP, started his gushing welcome all over again. "Sir, welcome, sir. Can I get you a—" Gorman's voice died in his throat. Mireya's tray slipped from her numb fingers. It hit the floor with a deafening crash of shattering ceramic, splattering toast and eggs across the linoleum. She didn't care. She didn't even notice. Because she was staring at the man who had just walked in. It was Mr. Orris. He was not Mr. Orris. He was, and yet he was not. The man standing in the doorway was the same man who had sat in the broken vinyl booth, the same pale blue eyes, the same facial structure, the same quiet intensity. But everything else was transformed. He was not wearing a threadbare, buttonless coat. He was wearing a bespoke, charcoal grey suit of such exquisite cut and material that it seemed to drink the diner's cheap fluorescent light and radiate a soft, expensive glow. His white beard, once wispy and unkempt, was now perfectly trimmed and neat. His hair, which had been hidden under a grimy beanie, was a full, respectable silver, combed back from a high, intelligent forehead. The tremor was gone. He stood tall, his shoulders back, radiating an aura of absolute, unshakable power. The cheap wooden cane was gone, replaced by the simple, confident posture of a man who owned every room he entered, including this one. A stunned, shocked, Uncomprehending silence filled the diner. This was not a transformation, it was a resurrection. Gorman's jaw was on the floor. His face, which had been twisted in a smug sneer at Mireya's firing, was now a mask of slack-jawed disbelief. He looked from the resplendent figure at the door to the memory of the bum he had kicked out, and his brain simply refused to connect the two. "Aris," Mireya whispered. The name a question, an impossibility. The old man's eyes found her. They travelled from her face to her ketchup-stained apron and finally to the shattered plates at her feet. A flicker of something passed through his eyes. It was not pity. It was not anger. It was confirmation. He took a step forward, his expensive hand-stitched Italian leather shoes clicking on the dirty floor. The bodyguards shifted, but he raised a single hand, and they settled. He walked past Gorman as if he were a piece of furniture. He walked past the lawyers, who parted for him respectfully. He stopped directly in front of Mireya, who was still frozen amidst the wreckage of her last order. He looked at her, and for the first time, she saw him smile. It was a small, sad, incredibly weary smile. "Hello, Mireya," he said, his voice. It wasn't the dry rasp of Mr. Aris. It was a clear, strong, and deeply resonant baritone, touched with the faint, cultured trace of an old European accent. I, Mireya stammered. Who? "My name," he said, "is Aristides Volkov." The name meant nothing to Mireya, but it meant something to the two cops in booth 4. One of them audibly choked on his coffee. "Volkov?" he whispered to his partner. "As in Ethelred Holdings?" Gorman, hearing this, finally rebooted. Ethelred Holdings. The Volkov Tower. That Volkov." Aristides Volkov ignored them all. His attention was solely on Mireya. "I believe," Aristides said, his voice calm, "that just before I arrived, this gentleman," he gestured vaguely in Gorman's direction, "informed you that you were fired." Yes, he..." Mireya was trembling. "I see." Aristides turned his head, just slightly, to look at Gorman. It was not a glare. It was not a look of anger. It was a look of pure, analytical indifference, the way a scientist might look at a microbe before placing it under a microscope. And in that look, Gorman was summarily judged, weighed, and found utterly, irredeemably wanting. Gorman shriveled. The bluster, the rage, the petty tyranny, it all evaporated, leaving behind a terrified, sweating man. "Sir, Mr. Volkov, I had no idea," Gorman stammered, wiping his hands on his apron. "It was a misunderstanding. A joke. Jensen, tell him it was a joke." "Mr. Gorman," said Mr. Barrett, the male lawyer, stepping forward. His voice was cutting. "My client, Mr. Volkov, is the principal owner of the Ethelred Holdings Group, which, as of 8 months ago, acquired the private equity firm that holds the master lease on this entire city block." He paused for effect. "In short, Mr. Volkov is, for all intents and purposes, your boss's boss's boss. He is, effectively, your landlord." Gorman's face went from pale to a sickly, greenish white. "And," Mr. Barrett continued, "we are here today because of let's call it a personnel issue." "Mr. Volkov," Gorman pleaded, his voice a desperate squeak. This waitress, she was stealing, giving away food, to him." He pointed at Aristides, and then immediately recoiled, as if he'd just pointed at the sun. "Yes," Aristides said, his voice quiet but filling the room. "She was." He turned back to Mireya. "You gave me coffee every morning. You told me it was on special. You paid for it from your tips. You gave me muffins and toast, food you claimed was extra, but was, in fact, destined for the garbage. Food this establishment, under Mr. Gorman's management, would rather throw in a landfill than give to a person in need. He looked around the diner. For the last 4 months, I have been Mr. Aris. I have been a ghost in this city, the city I helped build. I lost my wife of 50 years, and after I looked at my life, at the towers of glass and steel bearing my name, and I felt disconnected. I wanted to see. I wanted to know if there was any kindness left, any genuine, unrewarded, unrecognized decency. His gaze swept the room, landing on the cops, the other customers. So I became Aris. I sat in diners. I waited in parks. I huddled in shelters. And in 4 months, he said, his voice breaking with a sudden, raw emotion, in this entire vast city, only one person, one, showed me kindness. He pointed a single, steady finger, not at Mireia, at Mr. Gorman. And you tried to destroy it. The accusation hung in the air, thick and heavy as the smell of old grease. Aristides Volkov kept his finger pointed at the manager. Gorman looked like a man who had just been told the building was on fire and all the exits were locked. I was just protecting the business, Gorman stammered, his eyes wide with panic. Theft, policies. I have to enforce the rules. Sir, please, you understand. You're a businessman. Rules. Order. Rules, Aristides repeated, the word tasting like something foul. You are correct, Mr. Gorman. I am a businessman. I believe profoundly in rules, and I believe in consequences. He turned to his lawyers. Mr. Barrett, Miss Lena, if you please. This was, Mireia realized, what they had been waiting for. The main event. Mr. Barrett and Miss Lena stepped forward in unison, a practiced, lethal choreography. They clicked open their identical leather briefcases. The sound in the dead silent diner was like the cocking of 2 separate shotguns. Mr. Gorman, Miss Lena began, her voice crisp. We have several items to discuss. She pulled out a thick sheaf of papers. First, she said, the matter of this property. As Mr. Barrett noted, Ethelred Holdings is the primary leaser. We have in our possession a file 3 inches thick documenting over 47 separate health and safety violations in this establishment. Your cost-saving measures, I believe. She listed them. Faulty wiring, improper food storage, a walk-in freezer that has been, and I quote the report, 8 degrees above code for 6 months, a persistent rodent problem. Sal, the cook, widened his eyes from the kitchen window. He clearly knew. But, Miss Lena continued, that is a matter for the owner, Mr. Roth, to worry about. We are here about your management. Mr. Barrett took over. Mr. Gorman, we also have sworn affidavits from 3 former employees and 2 current ones. He nodded toward Sal, who nodded back, detailing systematic wage theft. What? No, that's a lie, Gorman shrieked. Is it? Mr. Barrett shot back. Our records show you regularly adjusted employee timesheets, shaving off 15 minutes here, 30 minutes there. We have proof you forced employees to work off the clock for cleanup. We have multiple complaints, which you buried, about skimming from the waitstaff's tip-sharing pool. And of course, we have the matter of illegal termination and workplace harassment. Gorman looked at Mireia, his face a mask of pure hatred. She told you this. She's lying. She's a thief and a liar. She told us nothing, Aristides said, his voice like ice. She never said a word. Then how? Aristides gestured to the 4 bodyguards. My security team is not just for show, Mr. Gorman. They are my eyes and ears. While I was Aris, sipping my coffee, my team was across the street. He pointed to the blacked-out window of a defunct laundromat. "They have been monitoring this diner for 12 weeks. We have audio, we have video, we have copies of the original timesheets you lost. We have, for instance, a crystal-clear recording of you 3 days ago, threatening Ms. Jensen with termination if she gave a homeless man a cup of coffee. We also have you, just now, firing her in front of 20 witnesses for a crime that does not exist." Gorman's legs gave out. He stumbled back, grabbing a chair from a nearby table to steady himself. He was, in a single moment, completely and totally ruined. "So," Mr. Barrett said, walking over and placing a single, pristine white envelope on the table in front of Gorman. "Let's talk consequences. This," he tapped the envelope, "is a notice of your immediate termination. For cause. From the diner's owner, Mr. Roth, who I just spoke with by phone. He was very motivated to cooperate when he learned Mr. Volkov was taking a personal interest in his property." Gorman stared at the envelope as if it were a snake. "This," Mr. Barrett produced a second, thicker envelope, "is a pre-litigation package. It outlines the civil case Ethelred Holdings is preparing to file against you, personally, for willful endangerment of a commercial property, and the separate class action lawsuit for wage theft we are funding on behalf of your employees." "No, please." Gorman was weeping now, fat, greasy tears rolling down his cheeks. My house, my kids. I'll be ruined." "You were ruined the moment you decided that cruelty was a management style," Aristides said, his voice devoid of sympathy. "You humiliated a man you thought was powerless. You tried to fire a woman whose only crime was compassion. You are the worst kind of man, Mr. Gorman. Not a powerful villain, but a petty one. A bully who punches down, and you have just run out of people to punch." Aristides looked at his head of security. "Thomas, Mr. Gorman is now trespassing. Please escort him from the property. He may collect his personal items at a later date, under supervision." "Yes, Mr. Volkov." The mountain of a man named Thomas stepped forward. He didn't even touch Gorman. He just loomed. "Out, sir!" Gorman, sobbing, threw his clipboard onto the counter. He gave one last, venomous look at Mireia. You did this." "No," Mireia said, finding her voice at last. It was shaky, but it was there. "You did." Glee was led out of the diner like a child. The door shut behind him. The diner was silent for a beat. Then, one by one, the patrons returned to their breakfast, speaking in hushed, excited whispers. The two cops in booth 4 were scribbling notes. Sal from the kitchen gave a low whistle and went back to his grill, a grin on his face. The crisis had passed, but Mireia's was just beginning. She was still standing in a pile of broken plates. She was still unemployed, and the most powerful man she'd ever met was standing right in front of her. Aristides Volkov looked at the mess at her feet. Then he looked at her. "Well, Ms. Jensen," he said, his voice softening, "I do believe you are in need of a new job, and I just happen to have an opening." Mireia's head was spinning. "A job? Mr. Volkov, I'm a waitress. I have half a nursing degree. What kind of job could you—" "Don't sell yourself short, Mireia," Aristides said. "You have something that cannot be taught in any university. It's not a skill. It's a quality. It's character." He gestured to his lawyers. "Mr. Barrett, Miss Lena, the real reason we are here." Miss Lena stepped forward, a different folder in her hand now. This one was slender, bound in blue. "Miss Jensen, Mireia, my apologies for the theatrics," Miss Lena said, and her severe expression softened into something approaching human. "Mr. Volkov is thorough. We had to see the scenario play out to its conclusion." "What scenario?" Mireia asked, bewildered. The test, Aristides said. I told you I was searching. For months I found nothing. Greed, apathy, indifference. Then I found this diner, and I found you, and I found him. He motioned to where Gorman had been. I found the perfect contrast, a single light in a very dark room. I needed to know how strong that light was. I needed to see if it would flicker when the wind blew. The last 3 days? Mireia whispered, the realization dawning. When you disappeared. Gorman's threat was the wind, Aristides confirmed. My team advised me to step back, to see what you would do. Would you, under threat of your own livelihood, abandon the old man? Or would you suffer the consequences? Your anxiety, your searching for me at the mission, your call to the police. It was all noted. You did not abandon me. You were just delayed. And today, Mr. Barrett added, was the final variable, your eviction. We are aware of Mr. Henderson. We know you are, by all metrics, in a desperate situation. And yet, when Mr. Gorman tried to turn you against Mr. Aris, you chose him. Mireia was stunned. You knew I was about to be evicted? We know, Ms. Lena said gently, that your student loan debt totals $84,312. We know your car's transmission is failing. We know your landlord is a predatory bottom feeder. We know you send $100 a month to your aunt in Florida, even when you can't pay your own electric bill. My client, Mr. Barrett said, is not just rich, Ms. Jensen. He's thorough, as he said. This wasn't just a test of you, Mireia, Aristides said, his voice full of a new warmth. It was a test for me, to see if my new purpose was justified. He took a deep breath. When my wife passed, I realized that Ethelred Holdings, my towers, my billions, it was all just a monument to myself, a cold, empty legacy. I decided to change that. I am liquidating 90% of my assets. I have created a new entity. It's called the Volkov Foundation. Ms. Lena opened the blue folder. The Volkov Foundation is a charitable trust with an initial endowment of $5 billion. Its sole mission is to find and support the unseen, the homeless, the working poor, the people failed by the system. It will provide housing, education, healthcare, and kindness. A $5 billion corporation is a machine, Aristides said. It needs a CEO. It needs a board. But more than that, it needs a heart. It needs a guiding principle. It needs someone who understands, in their very bones, what it means to give when you have nothing. Someone who will pay for a stranger's coffee from their own empty pocket. Someone who will protect a bum at the cost of their own job. He stepped closer. I am not offering you a job as a waitress, Mireia. I am offering you a seat on the executive board. I am offering you the position of Director of Community Outreach for the Volkov Foundation, with a salary, let's say, that makes your student loans a rounding error. And of course, a new apartment. Mireia's knees buckled. A nearby bodyguard, the one who had opened the door, caught her elbow and steadied her. Be bored, she stammered. Director? Mr. Volkov, I don't know how to run a foundation. But you know how to be kind, Aristides countered. You know how to see people. I can hire all the Ivy League business majors in the world to manage the money. I need you to manage the mission. I need you to be my conscience, to keep the machine human. Ms. Lena held out a pen. The car outside is waiting. It can take you to your new apartment, a 2-bedroom overlooking the park, rent prepaid for 5 years. It can take you to the law office to sign the papers that will clear your entire debt. Or, she said, it can take you home to your old apartment. The choice is yours. No pressure. Mireia looked at the pen. She looked at the broken plates on the floor. She looked at the empty booth, the scene of her small daily rebellion. She looked at Aristides Volkov, the man she had known as Mr. Aris, the man who had seen her when she was invisible. She took the pen. "Okay," she breathed. "What do I do first?" Aristides Volkov smiled. It was a real smile this time, bright and full of life. "First," he said, gesturing to the entire diner, "you buy everyone breakfast. Put it on my tab." Mireia Jensen's life changed in an instant, but not by magic. It was changed by a choice. A small, seemingly insignificant choice made every single day. The choice to be kind when the world was telling her not to. She didn't help Mr. Aris because she expected a reward. She helped him because he was a person who needed help, and she was a person who could. Her story is a powerful reminder that our smallest actions can have the biggest, most unimaginable consequences. You never know who you are helping. You never know whose life you are changing. And you never know who is watching. That old man on the bus, the co-worker having a bad day, the stranger you pass on the street. Your kindness could be the one thing they are searching for. What did you think of Mireia's story? And what would you have done in Mr. Gorman's situation? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. And if you loved this story, please show your support. Like this video, share it with a friend, and subscribe to the channel. You won't want to miss the next one.